And I'm fucking livid that we are stuck in the timeline where Alex Jones is right. As I said, democracy is a system that reinforces authoritarian ideals.
Why aren't the Amish afraid of COVID? Because they don't have TVs.
They were posting some crazy shit like months ago. Remember that?
You brought a freaking guillotine.
I did.
Being a victim of a tragedy doesn't make you an expert in public policy. Somebody telling them to stand up for their rights is disinformation. Kinds of words.
Oh no! Oh, okay, no. You want to make the world a better place? Have some babies and raise them to not be stupid.
Man, governments are not going to like this shit.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, activists and people of the internet, thank you for joining another episode of O'Donnell for Liberty. As always, I'm your host, Justin. And before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to keep up to date with future shows. And if you enjoy what we're doing, you can be an early supporter of the program by following the Patreon link in the description and signing up to join our production team. If you want to keep in touch between shows, you can follow me on social media or join our community Discord channel where you can chat with other fans of the show at any time. All those links are in the description as well. And first and foremost, we want to give a plug to our sponsor, SnexSwag.com, where you can get all your favorite Liberty merch, including some awesome new designs to showcase your distaste with government propaganda and news cycle propaganda. So make sure you remember, head over to SnexSwag.com to get all of your favorite Liberty merch today. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about getting beyond the headline, how deep you have to dive to escape the spin cycle, the spin of the clickbait news cycle, and how important it is to take a second look. So we're going to take some questions. So make sure you hit that like button, leave some comments, and tell us what you think in chat, and give a warm welcome to tonight's guest, founder and editor-in-chief of Second Look News, Stacia Wilson. Stacia, thank you for joining tonight. How are you?
Hi, Justin. I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, first and foremost, I mean, again, thanks for coming on. I wasn't familiar with Second Look News until just very recently, and I know a lot of people aren't, because you don't do the clickbait thing. You don't go viral. You don't tell people what you're all about. And it was a mutual friend of ours who reached out to me and suggested I should look into it. But why don't you fill everyone in? Like, what's your backstory? Where did you come from, and how did you get to where you are now?
Okay, cool. That's a big question, actually. I actually have a background in dance. My degree is in anthropology. I have been an entrepreneur in the dance community for years now. I've been a digital nomad for years. And with COVID, dance stopped and travel stopped. And I was paying attention to politics and news more than ever before. I think a lot of us, started paying more attention that year. And that led me to Unity 2020, which was a political movement trying to make a difference. And from that, I got the idea for news, to start a news publication. And it was just, I was like, what would I want? What do I need? Like, what could make a difference? I was trying to figure out how we fix things that have gone so wrong in our country. And I figured the media is at the center of a lot of it. The propaganda, kind of has us in bubbles. And so I wanted to bridge those bubbles so that we could have productive conversations about solutions.
Yeah, a lot of those bubbles are really the fault of the media and the fault of the traditional media picking a side when they report. Yeah. And that's really what you guys do differently, is you don't pick a side. You don't have a bias. You, like one of the videos I watched from you last week, you were going on and on about finding the objective truth. Mm. Like, it has to exist out there somewhere, and nobody's reporting on it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, there is an objective reality, right, of like what happened. And I do think everyone has their biases. Like, I think every individual has their worldview, their experiences, like we all have rose-colored glasses, or at least a certain color. Right. But what we do at Second Look is we do peer review. And that way we get a lot of different angles looking at it, people with a lot of different colored glasses. And that way we hope that we can get as close as possible to what actually happened.
Now, how did you decide like what to cover? Because if you're not engaging in the breaking news cycle, if you're not engaging in clickbait headline game, like you're not caring about being first. And all of what most major mainstream media cares about is being the first to publish. Because when you break the news, you define the news. And you guys have taken an entirely different approach to that.
Yeah.
So how do you decide what is worth covering and what's worth taking a second look at?
That's a great question. To some degree, it's people that we have, like writers, that we have available. So hopefully as our team grows and our, reach grows, we'll have people who can cover more stories. We actually haven't put out any stories about COVID yet. And I really want to, I keep wanting to, but, we need someone who can cover that well. And so we just found someone that we're trying out. She published something on a Substack, and I was like, ooh, I see potential, so let's try. So we run it through our process, like we have a system, and a lot of articles don't make it through the system, but the ones that do, we're very proud of. And yeah, how do we decide? Really, anyone can suggest things. Actually, one of our membership tiers, you're able to suggest things directly to our news team. So we're trying to strike a balance between, like when we were first coming up, like when I was coming up with this idea, some people were like, maybe you can make it so anyone can submit stuff and it's really open source, and
then you get Reddit.
Exactly. Yeah. So there has to be some quality control. I feel like the quality control is really valuable. So we want to mix though of like quality control and feedback, like so people can be really interactive. They can suggest stories for us. They can peer review our articles. Anyone can sign up to be a peer reviewer. So, so we want that dialogue. We want that back and forth with our readers. But then we also want to be really careful with what we put out officially.
Yeah, and you're so careful. You said you haven't put anything about COVID, which has been the leading breaking news story for the past 20 months at this point. So how do you get any kind of traction when you're not reporting on the one big story?
We're being patient. Like, because it would be, honestly, like most days I see a story or something about COVID and I'm like, oh my God, we need to cover this. And thankfully our editor is much more, our managing editor is much more patient. And I mean, we've had talks about this as a team, just that we need to be careful with what we put out right now. Like we need to build trust and build a reputation. And, like we don't want to come off as we don't want to take risks before we have the system in place to check ourselves, and we have some trust and we have some relationship with readers. And we're thinking, I agree, like people need to know what's going on with COVID and we need that good information. And I would love myself, because I have all my opinions, but I feel like my opinions are just opinions until I run it through the second look system. Like if it makes it through the second look system, then I have a lot of confidence in it, but until we do that, it hasn't been like seriously vetted. And so, yeah, I agree. So we're working on our first article on COVID, and we'll see if it makes it through.
Well, the serious vetting is the hard part. The serious vetting is it's astounding to me that any kind of news agency serious vetting isn't something that's considered ahead of time.
Right.
Like I look back, I think about myself. What would I think 20 years ago? If I were 20 years younger, before I'd had my political coming of age and like grown into my anarchist philosophy, I would have never believed that a medical crisis would be the most divisive political issue of my lifetime.
Yeah. It's wild. I never would have thought it either.
Like it's fascinating to me to like think how people have become so polarized by the news, how people have become so turned about and like turned on each other by the news that they're reported and what's fed to them. And it's not even just the news, it's social media, it's Twitter, it's YouTube, it's Facebook, and it's all of these brands and really big conglomerates, like with their own agenda, pushing their own view and brainwashing people.
Yeah. And it's great that some alternative media sites have popped up, and some of them, a lot of them that I know about, are kind of comparing the left and right perspectives. But the problem I have with that, even though it has some value, is that comparing two lies doesn't get you to the truth, right? I feel like generally they're both distractions. And then there's like an underlying, the truth is over there in the corner, and no one's talking about it. So yeah, we want to talk about that thing over there in the corner that we could all basically.
It's not even the thing over there in the corner. At this point, I think it's the elephant in the room. Because when I talk to normal people, like I engage with a lot of people via social media, just as a course of what I do. And I engage with a lot of people in my local community being actively involved in politics. And when I talk to people, even non-libertarians, even people who aren't like woken up to the disaster that is government, in my opinion, and everybody seems like utterly convinced that the news is lying to them.
Yeah, right.
But it's not the news. It's which news is lying least, or which news is lying in favor of their selected worldview that they seem to gravitate towards. And it blows my mind that the elephant in the room is that the news is lying to you. I saw a post, I shared it on Twitter just the other night, where somebody commenting saying, one of my Chinese friends asked me why I watch the news. I said, what do you mean? He's like, well, nobody in China watches the news. They all know it's propaganda. And at which point do we realize that American state media, like Fox, CNN, they're just state media arms as much as any Chinese state media is in China?
Yeah. I think people are starting to realize. Well, also, I have a question. Do you think it's always been like this? Or is it a new thing? Like, is it a recent thing?
I want to believe it's recent. I want to believe that, like, maybe the advent of the internet and social media. And I always joke, whenever I get in an argument with somebody, I say, who would have imagined that giving people access to the complete and total sum of human knowledge at their fingertips would make them dumber?
Yeah.
Because it's no longer, you would think when you come up with a debate or an argument with people that they would go to the internet to research and find the answer. No, they go to the internet to find a Reddit post of some whack job in Nebraska who agrees with them to use as evidence. Like we've connected the whole world seamlessly, and that has just made people more divided.
Yeah.
I'd like to think it's always like this, but one of the oldest jokes you ever hear is if you don't watch the news, you're uninformed. And if you do watch the news, you're misinformed. And I even remember hearing that as a kid.
Wow. Oh, I hadn't heard of that. Wow. I didn't realize until last
I grew up with conservative parents in very left-wing Massachusetts. So they didn't trust anything.
Oh, really? Interesting. Wow. Well, I didn't know until last year that the news was lying to us. And then there were, just a number of things where I knew more about the topic than the news, and they were getting it wrong. And I was like, what? Is this always how it is?
Oh, I feel that way about politicians, about news anchors, about people in the press. And like, honestly, that's how I first ended up getting semi-big on Twitter and generating a following on Twitter, was going after Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez about insurance, when she'd be preaching nonsense about how much insulin costs and how insurance companies are killing people. I'm like, hey, listen, like, I work in the insurance company. We give away the insulin for free. She's like, no, you don't. That's lying. I'm like, here's the coupon, and just published it on Twitter.
Oh, interesting.
But like, and nobody wants to promote any kind of objective truth if it doesn't fit their agenda. Like, there is plenty that's wrong with the insurance industry and medical care in this country. But if pushing the truth of what's wrong with it doesn't support the agenda of universal health care and single payer system, progressives don't want to do it. They'll admit that something's wrong, but they'll make up what is wrong. And on the right, you have this exact same issue on the right, just with different problems. They want to blame everything on immigration, and they'll manufacture a news story to blame it on uncontrolled immigration.
Yeah. Agreed.
So if you just came to the conclusion in the last year, what are the big things in the past year that did it for you? Like, what are the big news stories in the past year that broke you of the trust of the news cycle?
Gosh, so much has happened in the last year. Yeah, a number of the things around Black Lives Matter were really surprising to me. You know, like when I found out about all the white people who are also killed by cops, and I was like, shit, it's just the cops are killing people. Like, I mean, you know, it's more black people, but also white people. Like, we shouldn't be okay with that either. And so I don't know, that seemed like only certain stories were reported if it matched the narrative, when the actual narrative that we could all get behind is our cops are too violent, and you know, there's not enough accountability, and like, you know, like, and the laws, there's so many laws that like shouldn't be, like, things shouldn't be illegal, but they are, and so then the cops go after people who aren't like criminals, you know, and yeah. So I found out about all of that.
There's an old comedy song by an artist known as Lazy Boy called "Underwear Goes Inside the Pants," where he just rants about everything he thinks is wrong in society. But the opening lines on it to that point are, "Why is marijuana illegal? Why the hell is marijuana illegal? It's a goddamn plant that grows in the ground." And shit like that. But like, nobody, the news will never report that the United States has the leads the world. Like, they always talk about how we're the best country in the world. The only actual statistical category in which the United States leads the world other than defense spending is the number of adult citizens incarcerated per capita.
Yeah. We're working on a story about that. We're working on a data story to talk about the statistics or show the statistics about incarceration in the U.S. and how various laws over the years have affected those rates. And yeah, I didn't know that until last year, honestly. And that's messed up for, you know, the freedom country. Like, oh my God. Yeah.
No, it is absolutely wild. It's absolutely wild. And even with the modern push to legalize marijuana, to decriminalize other drugs, to stop enforcement of victimless crimes that activists have been working on so diligently in the past decade to kind of reduce these problems and eliminate the problems, the news isn't reporting on any of the positive outcomes. The news isn't reporting on the fact that when Oregon decriminalized all drugs, that they ceased to have a drug problem. They started getting people into treatment rather than jail. They're not reporting on the fact that every state where marijuana has been legalized, opioid deaths have plummeted through the floor.
Wow. Oh, these are good story ideas.
Is that the opioid epidemic is the fault of immigrants coming in through Mexico, is all Fox News wants to report about.
What?
So those are the things that always stuck to me. It's like, and maybe it's because I've been politically involved so long that I see what's happening and what is and is not reported. But when I look at an organization like yours, like, I do have questions like, how difficult is it? Like, how long does it take you to run an article through?
Oh man, it takes a while. We're trying to streamline the process. We're recruiting more peer reviewers and stuff like that, but it can take us 3 months to get an article out. It can take us more than that, because the writer usually takes a month or two of research and writing, and then we have the peer review process and the editing process, and sometimes we'll get feedback. We actually had one of the directors of the Swamp peer review our article on corruption in Congress, and me and the writer were like, what is he talking about? He's telling us we got something wrong, but what is he talking about? So we went and watched the video and like took a bunch of notes, and we were like, oh shit, we did miss some stuff. And so, you know, that was another like month of totally reworking that piece, and it became a 2-part piece. And yeah, so it definitely takes a while, and hopefully we can get a little more efficient in it. But we actually, I wanted to put out a like schedule, like we're going to publish every other Monday, or, you know, like I wanted to put out a schedule starting in October, and we just talked about it as a team, and we're like, I don't think we can stick to a schedule at this point, because we need to get it right. Like we can't have the pressure of a deadline if the piece isn't fully vetted and if it's not ready. And so we really want our readers to feel like I feel like when I read papers, I'm always like, or newspapers, I'm like super critical and careful and try to check things and stuff. And I hope our readers can have some like faith in our process. And I would like them to check us, but no one has time for all that.
I get that you hope that your readers, the people who have stuck by you and the people that have helped you essentially build what you have by being your readers and your base of support, would support you and would stand by you. But isn't there like any kind of fear that taking so long to get to market reduces your viability and value in the market as a news source? The reason first to print is always such a big thing when it comes to journalism, independent journalism as well as mainstream journalism, is because your value is dictated by your ability to present people information in a timely manner when it's valuable to them and when it affects their decision making. Mm-hmm. So if it can take you 3 months to get something out, the news cycle's moved on after 24 hours in most cases.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a problem. I mean, I don't know. Like, yeah. Hopefully we can put out stuff that like brings stuff back into consciousness, because the news cycle gets it wrong so often. I think it's valuable to have a resource that like corrects the misinformation, or like changes the angle, or presents
With that mentality, what makes what you're doing different than simply fact checking the news? Granted, we know that fact checkers as they exist now, they don't fact check the news. The news is the only thing they don't fact check, and they use the news as the resource to fact check everything else online. Yeah. But like, is that essentially what you're doing? Is just fact checking past news cycles?
I would say we present it from a different angle. So like almost always the news has a like, these are the bad guys, or it's very kind of attacking a certain political group or position or something, and so we reframe it in a like, no, actually look at it from this angle and you can see like what's actually going on underneath and stuff. I don't know if that explains it well, but right now the way I see it, there's like kind of conspiracy sites,
Yep.
Or there's like the mainstream, and I don't know many like really reliable alternative sources. I don't know about you, but it seems like it's all like alternative media that's kind of out there, and you're like, yeah, those are some assumptions you're making. Or it's mainstream that has an agenda.
Even alternative media seems to be coalescing around a singular worldview and a singular point of view on how they present their facts. And I do think a lot of that has to do with the politicization of censorship in private social media, where Twitter and Facebook and YouTube have taken a definitively more political approach in who they censor and who they allow on their platforms, that the alternative media platforms, things on like BitChute or Reddit or 4chan that are getting shared, are coalescing around more of a right-leaning perspective to counter that. Mm-hmm. So it's mainstream media and alternative media, like it's no longer, it used to just be like Fox and CNN. Now it's mainstream media and alternative media, because even Fox is parroting CNN from time to time now. They've taken the same side on things like COVID and vaccines and mandates, and going after people who oppose them.
Oh, interesting.
So what would you say your most controversial story has been?
Oh, we've actually tried not to do controversial ones yet.
Not yet?
Yeah, so actually, funny enough, the first story we were going to do was on election fraud. And I was just like, right out the gate, like, this would be a great story. Because I was seeing that it's so central to so many things. Like January 6th, it was actually about, it was people who thought that the election was stolen, and so they were like, we don't have a free country anymore. We need to storm the Capitol. Like, in theory, that's what was going on. And so it just seems so central. And I thought, if we can present, like, there are real arguments, for why people think the election was stolen. Like, these are the arguments that are being made. Look, they're some of them are crazy, but some of them are not, like, there's some real concern here. But then here's what here's what things that disprove that, and I thought we could kind of be a bridge between, like, you're not crazy, but, oh, there is this, information that disproves you. And I thought, I thought that would be the angle. But then when we actually looked into it, we were like, holy shit, maybe it was. Ooh, like, we found that there's a long history of, like, all these major, I want to say, like, Harvard and MIT and, all these things have put out reports saying, hey, the electronic voting systems are actually not secure. Here are some major concerns. Like, we need to address these. There are politicians in Congress talking about it, and we haven't vetted this story yet. So, like, we don't have, like, we were like, we need to, vet this hardcore, do more research, and probably wait to publish it, if we're gonna be saying, So,
Seamus does have a comment in chat. He says, it angers me that the Duffel Blog and Huffington Post are better at reporting facts than ABC and NBC. And I think it's a really real anger. The Duffel Blog is just like a military satire blog online. I used to follow them a lot when I was in the Army, but they are hilarious. And all of a sudden, that's the problem. They're a military satire site. They're like the Onion for military news. And like we see satire sites like the Onion, like the Duffel Blog, like the Babylon Bee, putting out headlines nowadays, and I'm like, I can't tell if it's satire anymore. And that's just the state of the world.
Yeah.
And so, like, at what point is the news cycle broken? Is the reporting of the news broken when satire can't be distinguished from reality on first glance? And to your point about, like, when you look into election fraud, like, God, there was so much controversial reporting here in New Hampshire about election fraud because they did an audit in one town. In Windham, New Hampshire, they did an audit afterwards. And what they came out with is, like, they proved a whole bunch of, like, problems and miscounted ballots and absentee ballots being counted twice, blah, blah, blah. And all the news reported is it didn't change the result.
Yeah, that's what happened in Maricopa County, too. Exactly. So it's not necessarily that Trump should have won, but holy shit, our system is not secure. Like, we have so many problems. Yeah. So,
and I was telling people, like, going into the election, everyone's like worried about election fraud. I'm like, don't worry. They're like, why not? I'm like, election fraud happens every year. They're like, no, it doesn't. I'm like, you go work in politics for one election cycle, and you will be more informed about election fraud than anybody who works on national television. I can tell you of people in New Jersey who make a living committing election fraud. Not for any particular party.
Wow, just for hire?
But just for hire, for whoever's paying the most.
Wow.
Office, they'll rig votes for governor. They'll rig votes for school board. And it's people saying, well, that's why we need to get rid of the voting machines and go back to paper ballots. They do it all on paper ballots.
Oh, no. Wow.
The problem with election fraud is a problem with elections. It's a problem with democracy. And it's all going to go back to a problem of reporting. Like, I don't think there was historically election fraud. I don't think, like, the first documented instances of election fraud come out of JFK's election when the Teamsters rigged the vote in Chicago to elect John F. Kennedy. But before that, like, think about what was different was trust in the news. It was a more respectful news cycle. People were informed and people made choices. It wasn't until the Cold War era where politics really started to get divisive in this country and there became a need to rig an election.
Interesting. Yeah. Did you know there was a report put out somewhere in the mid 90s that actually said we need a more politicized partisan Congress? It was some political organization. Our writer found this when he was researching the Congress article. He didn't include it in the article, but he told me about it, and he was like, yeah, there was this political organization and they were making this argument for why we need a more partisan Congress, because right now it's too kind of nuanced and people don't know who to vote for. So if we have like clear sides, then it would be much easier for people to rally behind their team. And yeah.
Well, I don't think you can. I don't think you can have, like, to that point. Yeah, that's exactly what it would do. It would create a blind party voting system if you had a more politicized Congress. But I don't think you can do it with just two parties, because I don't believe there's just two political stances.
Yeah.
I think somebody said, even if you took like just like the top 25 major issues and tried to like align them to parties, you couldn't do it with less than 6 parties.
Yeah, good point.
So and that could, it works in places like Canada. It works in places like Great Britain. In a lot of parliamentary systems, they don't vote for candidates; they vote for the party, and then the party chooses who in the district fills those seats. But that's not the system we have. I'm not saying whether or not it's the system we should have. I don't want to opine on that, because my opinion is well known to my listeners, and they know that I do agree with MD in chat. We should just burn it all down and let everyone form voluntary communities and choose whether or not to interact with each other. But even in a voluntary community, who you choose to interact with and the choices you choose to make are really dependent on where you get your information from and how informed you are about what's going on.
Yeah.
And so, like, I do think what you guys are doing at Second Look is incredibly important. I do just worry that taking so long to get to print hinders your ability to actually affect people positively.
Yeah. It's a concern we have. I mean, we're considering various things. I feel like, you can only do so much at once. And so first step is getting a good system for checking these long articles. And then someone suggested to us, like, we could do breaking news, kind of like something happened over there, maybe, we think, possibly, like, just very, like, allegedly, like, so
maybe you got to go the Babylon Bee or the Duffel Blog or the Onion approach and pop up a secondary, like, satire, first look news that all you do is publish headlines, story to come later.
Maybe. So many good ideas out there.
Yeah. I'm not sure that's a good idea, because people will start, like, grasping onto headlines. Like, I do love the Twitter. As much as I have problems with social media and how they hinder news development, how they hinder communication, and how they create echo chambers and have contributed to political divide in this country, Twitter recently released a feature where if you go to hit share on an article that somebody shared, it pops up and says, "Do you want to read it first?"
Yeah. I never read it. I'm just like, no, share.
But to me, like, that goes back to the problem. Like, people aren't. It is just a headline news cycle.
Yeah. Headlines are so important.
Like, how can Second Look News? How can Second Look News even like have a place on Twitter? Because you can't have nuance in 240 characters. Yeah,
I know. But actually, people have been using Second Look articles on Twitter as ways to kind of throw a nuanced opinion into a discussion, like to win the Twitter fight. Like, if you have a place where you can send people that isn't clearly partisan, in a certain direction, that cites all of its sources, that gives a complete picture of the, whole concept of whatever you're talking about, it can be a nice summary that you can just, like, hit people with. No, to win the battle. No, just kidding. Don't. But yeah, it can be useful for that. And what I think, I mean, I totally get what you're saying, and it's something that I think about a lot too, and it's a concern. But there have to be people out there like me who are just, like, overwhelmed with the information overload. and who have like no source of news that they really trust, and that kind of represents their perspective consistently, I guess. Because we're not attacking any political side. Like, we're respectful towards like why people think what they think, on various sides. And we're talking about the underlying issues, and we're checking, like, there's no one who's doing this that I know of. And so there have to be people like me out there who just like are craving something like this to exist. And if we can find them, I don't think we will ever have, I don't know, I don't necessarily think we're ever going to blow up and have a huge following. But I think we'll have a small, loyal following that will build slowly. And it's going to take patience. Like, it's not like we're going to blow up overnight necessarily.
Right.
I mean, maybe eventually we'll have a story that, really makes us splash, and that would be cool. But I'm not counting on it. I'm counting on more like small group. Like, as I've been traveling around, like, I'm a digital nomad, and like I was at a cenote the other day, and I just randomly met someone who's from Pasadena, and I'm in Mexico right now, and I'm from LA area too, and we were talking, and I told him about Second Look, and he was like, yeah, we need something like that. And so I think there are a lot of people who would like something like this to exist. And even though it's not going to spread with clickbait, like that kind of fire, it won't have that intensity. But I think that little by little, people will find it. And, like our people, like the people who are looking for something like that, who are like just starting to realize that the news is lying to them, and, they want something that is refreshing, that, they can trust. I think they'll find us little by little.
So I think most people would agree that that is what they want. I think most people would say that they want to be able to trust the news, that they want to be able to get accuracy in reporting. But when it comes down to it, people are like creatures of immediate gratification. And it's something I even struggle with when planning and producing this very show. Like, how do I make sure I reach out to be like, if breaking news happens and I have someone who's completely relevant to have on to discuss it, do I bump a guest? Do I reschedule someone? Do I do a special show? Like, how far out do I schedule my show to make sure things can stay relevant? And that's a real struggle in any form of media. Yeah. And it's something I haven't gotten perfect yet. I don't know. We're still figuring it out. But like, the immediate need for gratification for people, like, I don't know how we outweigh it with the need for completeness of information.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think people use different sources for different things. And so, I think they have their immediate gratification sources. And I don't think that makes Second Look less valuable to them. Just be sure to subscribe, and then you'll get notified when we actually do put stuff out.
Now, have you gotten any pushback from people? Like, if you put something out that just like completely crushes preconceived notions and opinions on a given subject, have you gotten any pushback from people saying, no, you're wrong?
So far, we haven't, actually. I've been surprised. Like, we put out an article on healthcare, and what else? We put out an article on energy, and we did an energy roundtable. That's one way that, we might also be able to get out stuff faster with our roundtable, although it takes a while to put those together. But yeah, no, we haven't gotten pushback, and we have, all of our articles checked by people from the left and the right. So we actually try to check them for triggers, because people have these like this, that person, or and so we kind of try to like just check it a little so that it's not super triggering to someone of a particular ideology.
It seems like the opposite of what to do if you want to get noticed in the modern mainstream news cycle. It seems like everything is structured to trigger somebody.
So true. But I want people to be able to share it, like I want people to be able to send it to their friend who has a different political opinion. And it's something that you can coalesce around. It's like a bridge. That we want to be that bridge. So you're right. Again, that would be so much better for. I mean, that's why the incentives are set up that way.
Right.
But yeah, I just keep finding people who want news like this. So if we get enough of those individuals supporting us, like,
then you keep doing it. All right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you haven't done anything really controversial yet. You haven't touched COVID. Mind blowing. I don't know how you managed to avoid touching COVID. And you stepped back from doing election fraud. So, with the exception of like COVID and election fraud, what's something that's controversial and decisive that you want to target and go after?
Other than those two? Oh.
Yeah, other than those two.
I mean, because we are working on those two. We are working on a story on surveillance. I don't know if that's controversial.
I think surveillance state was controversial until Snowden did what he did.
Yeah.
And then it became indisputable.
Well, part of why we decided to do that article is that I met this guy named Manny who was saying like they didn't even cover a lot of the major stuff that Snowden, brought up, and so he was like, we should do an article that covers the stuff that wasn't talked about and ties it in with like the history of surveillance and what's going on now, and kind of paints that picture. Is there anything more controversial than COVID or election?
More controversial? I'm not sure. I mean, Kamala Harris's record as a prosecutor, whether or not well, it should be controversial.
We're working on our next article is going to be on the eviction crisis. I don't know if that's controversial. Yeah, we're going to talk about like, one side is saying that it's the landlords who are bad, bad landlords, and the other side's like bad tenants and they're lazy and, so they're blaming each other. Meanwhile, BlackRock is buying up all these properties and has like 3 or 4 people in the government. So
right.
BlackRock like is the government, and they're, it's a little incestuous there.
Yeah, like the merger between corporation and state is the definition of fascism, but people on the left want to redefine fascism to mean people who send out mean tweets. That in and of itself is controversial, and I think maybe the most controversial thing that nobody's talked about. I don't know if it would be appropriate for a news outlet to talk about, maybe so much as an expose or something like Rolling Stone to publish a long form article, would be the decay of the American dream and how the American dream has been the American dream of a capitalist utopia has been replaced by a fascist state, and done so with applause because you can get your Amazon delivery next day. So those would be mine, but I think would take a full year to write, not 3 months.
Yeah, there are some big ones out there. Someone just suggested to me that we could do one on the immigrants who are coming to the U.S. right now. Supposedly, someone, I don't know. So, okay, this is not vetted at all.
All right.
Supposedly, someone took like money to their villages and was like, hey, here's some money. The U.S. is open borders now. You should go to the U.S. And they like got misinformation, I guess, that they would be allowed into the U.S. And so a bunch of them headed there. Someone just sent me this story, so I haven't looked into it yet. Yeah, I was like, yeah, but
there's so much surrounding like the current like influx of immigration at the border with Haitians, especially like whether or not the U.S. government was involved in the assassination of the Haitian president.
Yeah.
Because all of the people that were captured in the unit that assassinated him showed up on training documents from the United States Army.
Oh shit! I didn't realize that. Oh
Yeah.
wow. I mean, I know there's a long list of presidents and prime ministers and stuff who were against the vaccine who got killed. Have you heard that?
I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, I think the Haitian president wasn't like gonna vaccinate.
Yeah. Did
I
he?
don't know.
Did he
That's what
also
I
have
heard.
dirt on Hillary Clinton?
I don't know.
No, or maybe somebody should do an article about how El Salvador making Bitcoin legal tender is actually a bad thing for cryptocurrency.
Oh really?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that. Why?
because it's state regulation of cryptocurrency, and they're using it as a legal tender for government purposes, allows the state to regulate it, and they're forcing people to accept it. So people who don't want to accept it are being forced to, which to me is the antithesis of everything that Satoshi Nakamoto wrote in his cryptocurrency white paper for Bitcoin was about voluntary exchange. So I look at things like that, but that's definitely an opinion piece. There's nothing to back it up, and there won't be anything to back it up for another 10 years till we see the fallout. But that's a good question. Is there room in your unbiased news for opinion pieces? Or any kind of like editorial opinion?
Wait, I lost you for a second.
Oh, you're back.
Say that again.
Is there room in your unbiased kind of a news future for any kind of like opinion or editorial?
Yeah, people always want to write opinion pieces for us. And we'll consider it. I mean, it's a way to get content out more often, right? And I mean, it can be useful for people. It's just
We are losing you a little bit, Stacia.
Did I cut out?
You cut out.
All right. I think my office cut. So can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you a lot better now. But I was going to say that's
Hello.
something that just occurred to me. Is one of the biggest things in modern print media is the editorials and opinions. It's not so much the reporting of the news; it's the people in the editorial section of the newspaper explaining what they think about the news. And even in objective reporting, something like what Second News does, is there actually room for an editorial opinion about the objective news you're reporting, or does simply even just having an editorial opinion negate the unbiased nature that you're going for?
All of us in the company have our own opinions, and we disagree a lot. So I would be okay with sharing our opinions. I don't think that is antithetical to our unbiased news. But at the moment, I'm trying to focus on things that aren't being done elsewhere, that I think are really necessary and important. Like it takes us so much energy and like right now. And also, I don't know if this is gonna bite me in the butt later or now. It's almost better if we don't publish stuff if it's not like really good or worth reading, or I don't know. I feel like there's so much content. Like there's so much content out there in the world right now. And I don't know about you, but I have like 20 tabs of things that I want to read that I have in the back of my mind, like maybe someday I want to get to those. And I bookmark things and I'm like, I didn't read it, but later I'll read it, And I feel like there's so much information overload. Like there's just so much content out there. And personally, I would prefer that a news source would publish less content, better content, but then I can just read it like once a week or once a month, or just like not so frequent. Like, don't spam me with shit, but just like give me the important stuff occasionally. And so that's my, that's what I would want.
So you don't have push
that,
notifications turned on your phone, is what you're telling me.
Oh, no. If you reach me quickly, it's because I have a social media addiction and I'm probably just checking it. But yeah, no, I don't have notifications.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. So I'm hoping that the people, the small group of people who find us who are like, yes, this is what I've been looking for, I hope that they will give us access to like push notifications. And, I've thought about making an app for Second Look so that I can actually send phone push notifications. We do have a desktop notification thing set up. So if you go to the website on desktop, you'll have the option to sign up to get push notifications when we publish new articles. So, I'm hoping people will trust us with that. If we, don't publish too often, but when we do, it's worth reading. So at the moment, that's what we're going for.
All right. Well, at the mention of the website there, since we are nearing the top of the hour and we want to wrap things up, it's been great having you on here. Tell everyone where they can learn more about what you're doing.
Cool. Yes, that's it. So it's secondlook.news with a 2. And you can subscribe there. Follow us on social media. It's mostly Second Look News on social media. I think Twitter is secondlook_news. Yeah, thanks. But yeah, we'd love to get connected with you guys. If this resonates with you, if you're someone who's been looking for content like this, stick with us. We'll keep growing and developing, and we're trying to meet that need of like good information. So we'll keep experimenting with what people want, and we'll work on that.
All right.
I wanted to talk to you about crypto some.
Oh, crypto.
Sorry, I bring that up crypto at the end.
Crypto is what it is, and it's on a downturn. Everybody buy more Bitcoin. I know at least one person on Twitter is going to yell at me for saying buy more Bitcoin as a solution to all your problems, but it's the solution to one. The fact that government fiat is deflating to valueless because the U.S. federal government decides that they're just going to keep printing money and keep borrowing debt from other countries. So as long as your money is tied to the state, it's in trouble of being worthless. I should get a sponsor plug from Coin Payments for that, but if you guys want to learn more about crypto or anything about crypto, you follow me on Twitter. My DMs are open, and I'm not the most knowledgeable person in the world on crypto. I'm not a tech guy. I've just been buying crypto since I first heard of it. That's my only involvement in it, and I shill for it every day because it's been something amazing to be able to live off of. I'm not sure you can in most places of the world, maybe other than El Salvador and New Hampshire. But here in New Hampshire, we have a thriving community of people who accept cryptocurrency. And they tend to be the kind of people who might be interested in your kind of a news.
Nice. So, yeah. Actually, we found crypto people are like some of the most supportive of what we're doing so far. So, yeah.
So if you guys are watching and you want to tip in crypto, you can hit the CoinTree link in the description, and you can sign up for our Patreon with crypto as well. All the links to Second Look News is in the description as well, and make sure you go and follow them on Twitter and check out their website. And until next time, everyone, it's been an hour, so be free. Thanks again for tuning in and joining the show tonight. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and keep up to date with future shows. Leave a comment below to let us know your thoughts about the show tonight. If you enjoyed the show, you can join our production team over on Patreon by following the link in the description. And don't forget to join our community Discord channel to keep in touch between shows. The best part of all of this is the community that we build around it. And thanks once again to our awesome sponsors and fantastic patrons for helping to keep this show going. If you can't catch the show live, you can always check them out the next day on YouTube, Odyssey, Spotify, Apple Podcast Breaker, and all your other favorite podcatchers. So until next time, everyone, be free.